Hello, I'm Ron Miscavige, and this is Life After Scientology. And as usual, that's one of the cuts from my album that I did back in 1974 in England on Polydor Records. That's called Barnum and Gumbo. And I mentioned this before, I mentioned it again. I never tasted gumbo in my life at the time I did it. And then happened to go to New Orleans a couple times and had it down there. It's a fabulous dish. Anyway, we have a very special guest on today, an old friend of mine. I know him for decades, and he has a history that you're going to believe it because he's telling you the truth. But very interesting guy. But before I do that, let me acknowledge those of you who became Patreons or increased your amount you're giving to Patreon. I want to acknowledge it because your help is greatly appreciated. And any of you out there who are thinking about doing it, why don't you just go ahead and do it today? It helps support this program, to support the ongoingness of it, and I'll continue to do it. I'm not going to stop no matter what, but this helps us to keep the show going. Now, Patreons, okay. Renee Unrun, $20. Thank you very much, Renee. Heggy, $1. Thank you. Michelle Hegan. I hope I'm not murdering these names, but I'm doing my best. Please forgive me. Michelle Hegan, $1. Thank you very much, Michelle. Daphne, $2. And thank you, Daphne. Susan A., $1. And thank you very much, Susan. Andrea Strobel went from $3 to $10, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. Melissa Maresca went from $1 to $5, and thank you, Melissa. Maddie Odegaard, that sounds like a Scandinavian name. Odegaard, $1. Thank you very much. And Susan Winter, $3. Thank you very much, Susan. And then David M. went from $5 to $8, and I thank you very much. These are all Patreons or people who have increased their donation to Patreon, and they help keep this going. And they've turned from just viewers into people who are participating in it with that donation. Because no matter what you give, whether it's $1 or $100 or anything in between, it is very much appreciated. And you are doing something about it to help us to keep this going, keep on exposing the abuses that the Church of Scientology does, and also other similar cults, which as these programs progress, I'm going to get into that. So now, without any, well, maybe a couple more words, but not much, I want to introduce a friend of mine. And this is a guy, I'll tell you, he rose right to the top of the organizing board. At one point, he was the third person in charge of all of Scientology by the powers invested in him by the church itself. And his story is well worth listening to. You're going to enjoy this because he went through hell and high water to get to where he is now, and got very sick at one point, recovered, strong as ever right now. Wrote a book called The Expert Witness. And I will tell you this, I got the book. I got it on Kindle so I could read it right away. I couldn't put it down for 2 days. I spent every waking minute reading it, so I finished it. I highly recommend it. It's a factual account of many things in Scientology you may have heard about, but he goes into detail as exactly how these things went down. Anyway, without further ado, Jesse Prince. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning, Ron. Thank you so much for that nice introduction.
Well, you deserve it. And let's go on the interview here. And as per usual, what I like to do with my guests, so we can start from the get-go. Why don't you tell us how you got involved in Scientology, how you got in, and a little bit about that, okay?
Sure. I was very young, I guess 21 years old. I was living in Decatur, Illinois at the time. I had moved there from Chicago to be with my dad, who had moved to Decatur to work at a nice company, Firestone. At any rate, I wanted to go to California. It was every kid's dream, you know, from watching television and seeing all the movies to want to go to Hollywood, to want to go to California. So me, my younger brother, and my good friend at the time, we had just gotten our income tax checks. And we said, hell, let's just go to California, pool all our money, go to California, have a good time, and come back. Well, that's how it started. So in the book, I kind of go into traveling across the country from Illinois to California and ending up in San Francisco, which is where I contacted Scientology. My brother and my friend had already gone back home. I decided to hang out and see what I could do. And I tell you, it was like a movie script. I was walking down the street, just getting off of my work for the day in San Francisco. I was downtown near Manson Street, where the old Scientology organization used to be. And this incredible looking redhead woman comes up to me and she says, "Would you like to know more about yourself?" And I look her up and down unashamedly. And I told her, "No, but I'd certainly like to know more about you." And we started making small talk, and she walked me back into the Scientology organization. And I guess the rest is history. You know, I started in the organization and immediately joined staff that day. You know, they showed me the bridge and talked to me about the wonderful things they're able to do to improve a person's communication skills, learning ability, this type of thing. And I was, of course, naturally interested in all of those things because I had avoided college up until that point. But I was actually on my way to the Navy. It was a choice between either trying this or going to the Navy. I was already scheduled to go to the Navy. And I ended up trying it out. You know, they talked to me about it. And then a Sea Org mission came from Los Angeles to the San Francisco organization. And they spoke about the Sea Org and they spoke about all the adventure and different things associated with that, which, of course, that I was very interested in that as well. Ended up signing my contract and coming to LA and to start my introduction to the Sea Org courses. And 3 months later, I was in the RPF. And, you know.
Did you say the RPF or the EPF?
Well, when I first arrived, I went to the EPF and I was there for 3 months. And after that, I was on the RPF.
Welcome to life in the Sea organization. Hey.
Exactly. Things change rapidly.
Let me back up just for 1 second, Jesse, because we spoke priorly to this interview, you know, setting up what we're going to talk about and everything. And you mentioned one of your go buttons was these superhuman powers that they promised. Can you get into that?
Very much so. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Ron. I guess ever since the age of starting at maybe 10 years old, I was having these out-of-body experiences as a child, like and growing up. You know, sometimes, especially at sleep time, before and after sleep. Before I go to sleep, sometimes I'd get into this state where, you know, my mind was awake and my body was asleep.
Right.
And you know, all of the fear and stuff, but it kept happening where I'd be in this disassociative state. I didn't understand what it was that was happening to me. And it continued to happen to me through my adolescence, off and on. And then I, at some point, became unafraid of that phenomenon. And I learned to control the fear. And I could generally just be like right outside of myself and know it. I could see myself from an angle sleeping wherever I was, but I would always stay real close because I had to learn not to fear that phenomenon. And then the next big fear was how do I get back in, you know,
Yeah.
and then other spirits hanging out, you know. So I had awareness of, it's like I had one foot in this reality and one foot in another one, you know, and I was very curious to know what this was about. I started reading books. I read Carlos Castaneda books, and I read Urantian books, and I was a avid reader of the paranormal phenomenon at the time.
Right.
And so to see, when I walked into that Scientology organization, and to see the gray chart where it actually looked like someone had taken the time to separate out these different paths that you could take in order to enhance your learning and living experience. And someone had actually codified it and made a gradation chart where you could, you know, successfully ascend or cross or traverse these different aspects of life and succeed. And I was very impressed by that. I thought, wow, you know, because I had read, you know, different books, and it was one guy, there's this philosophy, there's the Buddhist philosophy of, you know, in Scientology, they call it, well, they call it the out-of-body experience. In Scientology, they call it exteriorization.
Right.
And Buddhists, they have a name for it as well, but it's kind of all the same. So I was interested in that, and then there's a lot of what people call magic associated with being aware of that, as opposed to just being aware of being alive and having to work and, you know, just in the matrix, as opposed to the only having the reality of being in the matrix, as opposed to it's a little bit more than that. It's my belief we as humans are multidimensional beings, and we're focused right now on this physical reality, but there's certainly other realities.
Yeah, I do agree with you, because I didn't have quite that, but I'll tell you, my biggest experience with this was my wife used to tell me that she could hear me snoring, and I says, no, I've been awake half the night. She says, well, I'll tell you, I hear you snoring. Now, when I was in the Sea Organization, my wife Becky went away on a mission, and I'm laying in bed one night, and I'm thinking to myself, God, I got to get to sleep. I'm so goddamn tired, you know, and I hear snoring, and wait a minute now. I'm the only person in the room. So I was out of my body, similar to what you said, close to it though. And I could hear my physical body snoring asleep.
Yeah.
Now, that phenomenon, which is called exteriorization in Scientology, or out-of-body experiences by people in the world, that has been promised by Scientology that you could achieve that on a causative basis. And I don't know of one person, and I was in Scientology for 42 years, I never met one person who could causatively do that or demonstrate it.
And I'll raise my hand and second it.
Yeah. But it's interesting that was your go button or your interest point, because it was one of mine too. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Yep, that was certainly a go button for me. I had gotten that phenomenon under control to the point where I could move away from myself, come back without the extreme panic and fear that would normally set in with it. Because, and one thing I did learn, the panic and fear is associated with death, because this whole thing of separating the spirit, separating from the physical, is a manifestation that happens when you die every time.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of trauma associated with that. So, yeah, I was very much interested in that. And they seemingly had a path to that. And, you know, the guy that I talked to from the Scientology Sea Organization, Gary Epstein was his name. He was the commanding officer of Scientology's advanced organization in Los Angeles. And he kind of talked to me and convinced me that going to Los Angeles and at his organization would bring me to the knowledge that I was looking for. And it just seemed like a win-win situation to me. So, off I went.
Yeah. So now you're in the C organization and you're in the RPF. So let's continue there.
Oh my goodness. Well, the first thing I did was saw the RPF. I couldn't believe these people running around in these black uniforms. Some of them had dirty white rags tied around their bicep. And some of them had dirty gold rags tied around their biceps. But one thing that was consistent, they would not speak unless they were spoken to. And they did not walk. They kind of trotted everywhere they went. And they, everyone was sir. And they were beholding to everyone. And quite honest, when I first saw that phenomenon, it disturbed me. It was like I hadn't seen people act that way or be treated that way unless they were like black or slaves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I was being honest, people, when you are so coward, from rejection or whatever, I mean, that's what this whole group of people, and there were almost 200 of them like that.
Wow.
And that kind of struck me as odd. Anyway, they brought that what they now call the Big Blue out there, the complex. They had just purchased it. I was on the EPF learning to be a SEORG member. I quickly got through those courses in a 3-month period of time, and they sent me on the mission. Now, concurrent with this, Pat Broker was purchasing that Cedars-Sinai Hospital. Of course, it wasn't blue at the time. It was just a big hospital building. It had a big barbed wire fence around the whole building. The one that eventually became to be known as Big Blue, and the one across the street, AOLA, they all had 6-foot-high barbed wire fences with wire bending in to keep people in as opposed to people out. I thought this is odd arrangement. But in a German Shepherd patrolling. And it was my job to set it up so that another mission could come. I was supposed to set up offices and birthing spaces for another mission that would then come and organize the renovation of the entire complex. So my mission was kind of like the genesis of starting the renovation of the complex. And when I got there, there were still dead bodies in the morgue and all kind of crap they were still hauling out of there.
Are you joking? There were still dead bodies in there?
In the morgue, yeah, and body parts in jars.
I didn't know that.
It was like American Horror Story down there.
Jesus.
And so here I am, and I'm supposed to do this construction, of which I know nothing of. I've never done this kind of work before. And I have, as a workforce, this entire rehabilitation project force, which at that time was about 120-something strong. And there was a guy there. His name was John Segoda. He said, "Jesse, don't worry about it. We'll help you." He didn't say Jesse, "Sir, we'll do it." So I kind of learned construction. I learned to read plans. I learned, to fix up these offices the way they needed them. But it took time. And apparently I was not fast enough. And so I started really getting the heat, the pressure, and up day and night. And finally I was just so exhausted. I just said, you know what? No, I'm going to bed before I actually hurt myself, and I laid down, I slept for some hours, and then I was immediately awakened and told it was urgent for me to come downstairs. My mission ops and, a very important person from the SEORG was there to see me. And of course I go down there and it's Wayne Marple, dressed up in the fake uniform with the campaign bars and stripes and all of this stuff, and at the time, to me, this was nothing short of magic. What the hell? Where did they go and get these people from with all of this, pretend authority and these stripes and, all of this decoration? It's like glamour magic, you know what I mean? Like, It's just fake a scene, But there he was in all of his glory. He almost shined so much. You know, he had so much going on. It was like, it just kind of broke my anger when I saw him. Like, what is this? You know. And so he starts explaining to me, you know, how I'm not moving fast enough. I need to get out of bed right now, you know, and finish this because it's so important. We got to clear the planet, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, you know what? This is not my scene. This is not anything I'm going to do. So I'm going to let you guys go ahead. I'm getting the hell out of here. You know, I'm not getting paid nothing, you know, and then you're sweating me too. Oh, no, this is over the top, you know. And he just smiles at me, you know. Oh, really? You're going to leave now, huh? You signed your contract. You signed a contract. You just finished. We invested all this money, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, wow, I did sign that contract. Shit, I wonder how much trouble I'm going to get in for signing a contract now when I didn't know what I was signing, because I knew when I signed it, I should have read it, and I didn't, you know, because no one does. So, you know, I'm like, I'm like, wow, does he got me, you know? And then he went on to explain, but if you want to go, there is a way to go, you know, and then you have to follow a procedure. And if you follow that, we'll let you go. Okay. Okay. So, you know, the RPF people get me, put me in a damn room, and I'm in that room for like a month because I still want to go. And they're like, no, you can't go. And, you know, and you're here. You went through all of this training, and now you're here. You're such a loser. You're going to give up now. You know, what about the technology? What about the OT level? You know, all this kind of stuff, you know. So finally I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So at that point I gave my consent. Right. And I became one of them. And I was such a good one. And this is so crazy, Ron, because when I think about it now, I'm like, how did this even happen? I'm wearing my little black uniform. I got my little white thing on because I promised to be good. They found out that armband means, hey, don't mess around. You know, monitor yourself. The ones with the gold means they're monitoring themselves and other people. So, you know, I'm learning to do whatever the hell I'm told. And the next thing you know, they give me the keys, you know, here, go pick up the kids from the people that are on the RPF that have children that are in another building called the Melrose, and they get a chance to see them like once, you know, a couple hours a day and blah, blah, blah. And it somehow it becomes my job to go and pick up these children and bring them from the Melrose, which is way across town in Los Angeles, back to the Big Blue complex so the parents can be with them for an hour a day.
Wow.
And God, I went over there to pick up those children, roach infested. You know, these children were just so unkept. It's just like, it smelled like sour milk in the whole place. It was just overwhelming.
I know.
And one of the little babies.
The care for children is abominable. I'll tell you, man.
From the very beginning, it always was.
Yeah.
They have no respect for infancy. You know, as L. Ron writes in his writing, you know, Science and Survival. I mean, this guy was a maniac when it came to children, and what he did with his own children is a whole nother horror story. But anyway, the point I'm wanted to make is one of those little children that I went to pick up in a cargo van with no seats. They're rolling around on the floor as I drive across Los Angeles. Was Juliette Lewis. And her father, Jeffrey Lewis, was married to a girl there. What was her name? Tracy. A girl from CCLA. Tracy. There was Tracy Lewis and another famous girl. I forget her name, but they were like the celebrity, pretty ladies from CC. And I would bring Juliet to the complex to visit with her mom that was her stepmother who was in the RPF. And that's when I start to see some of Scientology star power, because here I am, you know, the quote unquote monk, and, you know, and in a vow of poverty. And here comes this damn movie star, you know, looking so different than us. You know, people with money, how different they look. Their teeth are white, they're clean, their hair are perfect, their skin is perfect. You know, they take care of themselves. This guy comes in amongst us, and we look like coal miners.
Yeah.
And it was just to see that contrast, which is another thing that kind of kept me going. It's like, well, if he puts up with this shit, I guess I can put up with a little more, you know. And then there was also Yvonne Gents, you know, who was over CC, who was an amazing person. You know, there were so many amazing people in Scientology itself. Too bad Elron wasn't amazing, but all of the people supporting him, you know, they gave their heart. They were, to me, the true builders of the movement.
Yep.
He was just able to somehow take advantage of them. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, and so you know,
no, you're right, Jesse, because what he was a good talker. That's what he could do. He could fabricate a story out of nothing, and he was so authoritative in his tone of voice and the way he spoke. People would believe him. And
well, he was a professional hypnotist for one damn thing, you
yeah.
know, and he used to do that to people. He used to put people, you know, make them think their hand was burning. When you read some of the stories of how this guy was already mental and knew how to knew something about human emotion and reaction, so he could predict human behavior, and he knew some things, and he would certainly take advantage of people. He was very good at it. I mean, you know, you listen to his lectures, you sit there, it sounds good. The next thing you know, you're agreeing with all that shit, and you don't.
Yep.
You're gone.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you listen to enough of those lectures, and you're with, as they say, with the program. You know.
Exactly.
Excuse me, I got to. Okay, so back to driving the kids over, which I couldn't imagine you, a Sea Org member, going over in a van with no seats, throwing little babies in there like bags of grocery, and then driving across. But you had to do it.
And I think I still had my Illinois driver's license. You know, I didn't even have my California driver's license yet.
At least you had a driver's license, you know?
Yeah. So, and then, you know, after being in RPF for maybe 6-7 months, wham, you know, waking up, rifles and shit, you know, get out of our little cave. Here's the FBI everywhere. Got us under searchlight and rifles. We're standing up, you know, like, you know, and what the hell are you guys doing down here? You know.
Oh, you were there when they raided it.
Oh yes, they woke us out of bed. Yeah,
God,
and we were in a room. It was so dark because it had no electricity. We were on mattresses on the floor, about 12 of us. When they came in, and they came in with rifles and shotguns down like this, and lights, because they were looking for the lights to turn on. So, but you couldn't. So they made us stand up and come out, and then, yeah, they were raiding. Chainsaw, cutting down doors in B1, hauling out boxes full of information. We're just witnessing all of this go on in 1977, and I'm just like, I'm so freaked out. I'm like, what have I got myself into? this little question, you know, I didn't know I'd have to go to Hogsworth, you know, and all this other madness associated with it, because it was a rough deal.
Wow. Jesse, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to, because it's wearing on my mind. You mentioned when you first went to Big Blue that they had this barbed wire fence around it, and it wasn't blue. You mean
it was Cedars-Sinai Hospital before, Rob. It was a hospital that the movie stars used to go to back in the 30s and 40s.
But I only knew it after it had been painted blue, I guess.
Oh no, I was the original person. I ended up going on the RPF and then painting all them crazy colors in all of the buildings. I was on the RPF for 18 months. I ended up being the person doing the damn renovations, all that construction, all of that shit for 18 months,
including painting it blue.
Yes. Well, you know, we hired a professional company to do it, but we tried it first, and yeah. We did the whole inside. Some people did the outside, and there you go.
Son of a bitch. That's, but well, what am I going to do? I actually forgot about that if I ever knew it. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I ever knew it. I always thought somehow, and I just assumed it would always have been blue.
No.
Okay. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. At least it satisfied me. But now you're talking about the FBI raid in 1977. Let's continue from there.
Oh yeah, I mean they came in, they raided, they took chainsaws to the doors of B1, hauled stuff out, and we watched them do it for hours, just for hours, and it was just like living in a dream. It's like, what the hell is happening? You know, the whole street was flooded with FBI agents.
Wow.
And then we started to hear rumors that they were raiding in multiple locations. It wasn't just LA. And it was just like that, you know, at least for me, when I get really afraid, I get a certain taste in my mouth. You know, it was kind of like, I don't know, acid, metal, something, you know. I was just way out there on the edge watching all of this. And the amazing part is even though we were all there, no one asked the FBI to help them leave, help me get the hell out of here. They won't let me go because no one could go.
No.
But you know, it's like we had already given consent. So no one asked to leave. And this is why the FBI does not raid. This is why no one ever comes to the rescue of people in Scientology, because they don't want to be rescued. You cannot take people against their own will. You know, the freedoms and whatever we have here in America. So no. And that's every time people think, how come the FBI doesn't go in there and just end it? They can't. Those people are doing what they want to do. They've given consent. They've signed documents. The lawyers who are so smart had the people sign away their soul, sign away their lives, so that it prevents anyone from doing anything to help them.
Jesse, that's so true. As a matter of fact, in my book, which you can see here, Ruthless, I go into that very same thing, that people build a prison in their own mind. And now they've built the prison that they occupy, and they don't want to leave it because they don't think it's a prison. They think this is reality.
Or they don't think they can leave it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, and I know self-included, after a certain point, you know, after everything came crashing down, you lose everything. You have to take perspective of where you are.
Yeah.
And for me, I was in my 30s. Oh, if I could only do that again. But back then, after everything came crashing down, I'm in my 30s. I have no college education. I've abandoned my family. You know, where do I go? How would I start my life over again? And to me, that is one of the biggest barriers for people that are still in helping them leave, is because they have no place to go. They've burnt all of their bridges. You know, Scientology has, you know, you had to disconnect from your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, you know, all of this stuff. Your whole life prior to Scientology has been wiped out and destroyed. So you have literally no place to go back to.
And no
money.
money.
Sign this damn contract. You got no money. You got no hope of any money. That, you know, what are you going to do? Go out and be homeless, you know, or be an SP and get shunned by everybody, you know? So that is a barrier. I mean, it's more than just, you know, the physical barriers. There's a lot of mental barriers. And I know for me, I was just prepared to just die. I was my biggest thing when I was towards the end of my career was I wish I could just be dead.
Wow.
You know, I'm here, you know, and I can't get out. I got nothing to go to. Nobody cares about me, and it's my fault. I just want to die and hit the do-over button, or however this goes. And it was just like my last years in Scientology, I described them like just being out in the field, like a smooth brain cow. You just no consciousness, no thought. I'm just out there chewing the grass, staring at the fucking ground. you know, until that day, my wife came to me and said, let's get the hell out of here. And, you know, and I had wanted to leave long ago, but when they got me, you know, and son David and, you know, these people, when I wanted to leave, they got my then wife, who I refer to as Molly in the book. And they had her and they had me. And it's like, she didn't want to go. She didn't know, because I hadn't had time to explain to her what was really going down. And then I made a decision. Look what Scientology has taken from me. I have no family. I have no education. I have to start all over from the beginning. All of that, I've betrayed every person I know. But I know I have to leave. But here at this person I'm married to, you know, she don't know. And I made a conscious decision. I'm not going to betray another person in my life for Scientology. Whatever I have to go to until this person wakes up, I'm going to go through it.
Wow.
And it took years. It took years for her to finally come to herself.
I have to tell you something. It's very similar to the situation I had with my wife, Becky, because she's the eternal optimist. She'll go in a room and see a light where there is none. And, you know, and a pessimist goes in the room and blows the fucking light out, you know?
Right.
And I mentioned to her years before we left, I said, listen, this thing is going south. We're in a bad position. And she would always say, no, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And I'm sure, of course, I know your first wife, and her name wasn't Molly, but I'll respect your right to keep it very confidential.
And she was my second wife, by the way.
Okay, well, I knew her, though, when you were in Sea Org, obviously.
Right.
And I could see her as being convinced that somehow this was the right thing.
But you know what? Earlier, she had wanted to go. And she was telling me to go. This is when I was in my power and my glory. And I'm like, don't you dare even say that. She was telling me, this Miscavige is dangerous. I want to get the hell out of here. You know, she's like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, you know, what have you done? What are your overs? You know, this kind of shit. And and I made her turn around. I'm like, don't do this to me. I'm in a high position, you know. You don't. Just stop. And she did.
Now, is this when you were the cramming officer for the high level?
No, this is that incident I'm just talking about. That's when I was like the third person, like the Deputy Inspector General of RTC.
Wait, say that title again.
Deputy Inspector General External RTC, which meant that I was responsible.
How did that command go? Who was above you in that?
The Inspector General. Corporately, I'm just telling you how I worked on paper. Who was ahead of me was Vicky Azaran, Annie Broker, and Pat Broker, and L. Ron.
Wow. Not even David at that point.
No, not corporately. On paper, you see, trying to create the illusion of corporate integrity, where, you know, our whole game we were trying to do was to show that L. Ron was not the managing agent of all of Scientology. There was a point in time during the years I specifically cover in the book where we had to reincorporate the Scientology entities around the United States and internationally so that they had their own board of directors, their own managing agents on paper, so that they were set up properly as, you know, these institutions are supposed to be, so that they were in compliance with the Internal Revenue Code so that they could get tax exempt status. When author services were created, all of the people that worked at author services were Sea Org members, but when they started working at author services, they had to retire their Sea Org contracts. They had to cut those contracts completely, and then they got paid the money regular people got made, because that was a for-profit business. Couldn't have non-profit church people working for a for-profit business. So all of those people in author services, including David Miscavige, ended their Sea Org contract. So he had no authority on paper, you know, over the Sea Org. The Sea Org is a separate entity run, you know, to give the illusion of corporate integrity to get the tax exempt status.
Now, apparently, but in fact, he did run it though, didn't he? Or was it L. Ron Hubbard that ran it at that point?
L. Ron Hubbard ran it until he had that first stroke. No, he ran it until, and I go over this into the book, until he realized he couldn't anymore because he was about to be put in jail, period. Period. The Department of Justice was getting ready to get him. The Internal Revenue Service was getting ready to get him. He had two government agencies coming after him. And that was real. That was as real as the air you and I are breathing right now.
Wow.
And that's the only reason he never did come to that base to stay at the gold base.
Okay, so just so we can clear it up for our viewers, because we've been doing a little bit and piece. Let's go from you were in the you were in the RPF. You got out of the RPF. Just could you briefly raise
yeah. I got out after 18 months, and let's see here. I got out, and I guess that's when I met, around the time period I met your first son, Ron.
Ronnie, yeah.
Junior. Yeah, Ronnie Jr. I got out. I was in the LA area after I got out, and I wanted to go to Flag, you know, the Flag land base in Florida, because that was where all the technical stuff was happening, and that's what I was into.
Right.
I had done training now, and I'm, you know, I've done OT levels and everything, and I ended up going to Flag, and that's when I met Ron Jr. And I was his course supervisor, along with Bill Franks and Kerry Gleason and all of these people, and I supervised them on the Nephro-Tease materials. And then Ron, you know, I used to hang out with him on the weekend. He used to take me out and teach me how to shoot. Yeah, I had all kind of guns. The one thing that always kind of made me perk up when Ron Jr. came around is that damn voice. You, Ron, Dave, you all have a quality to your voice that it's just like, I thought you all could have been some really incredible singers. And I had wrote about that before when I were recounting things about David, that if he had been redirected, if his life had been redirected and he could sing, hold a tune, new music, he would have been quite because he had a voice. He had a very incredible voice. You know, the only other person that had a voice like that would go deep like that I actually met, and that was a small person, was Prince. When I went to Minneapolis, that guy had such a deep voice when he spoke. It was kind of like you just knew it reverberated.
Wow.
It kind of had a vibration. And that's the way how you, Ron, and Dave are to me. You know, you have a timbre to your voice that is distinguished, and you're like a singer.
Well, you know, these days I do sing. I do gigs where I sing as well as play my cornet or a trumpet or a flugelhorn. Anyway,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I could see that back then. Yeah. And I think that also gives Dave an advantage of you know, that charisma, to being able to affect people.
Yeah.
He has an amazing gift of voice.
I think you're right, Jesse. So now you're supervising these people.
Yeah, I'm at Flag. I'm supervising. I meet Ron, and that's when I started meeting some of the aristocracy of Scientology, because the Flag land base was like, they were the ones that were actually managing Scientology internationally. They were not the Flag, but they had another part of it, called not the HDB. This is before the management building at Flag. I forget what they even called it now, but that's where your son Ron worked at. CMO, and he was doing missions, and he ended up sending me out around the United States to go and fix smaller Scientology organizations in Seattle, San Diego, all over the place. Me and Kathy Render ended up going everywhere.
Wow.
And you know, I just became proficient at training and training others until that time happened where I got picked to come to the gold base. But prior to that, I was just like a normal person, and I've always been kind of easygoing. I've never really met a stranger, and you know, I was liked and well thought of. I never mistreated people, and because for one thing, and this is a fatal flaw that if ever I hoped Scientology would fix in me, it was this. I have no ego, no kind of will or desire to be number one or to be on top or anything like that. The whole time that I went up in Scientology, I've never once asked, please promote me, or I want to do this, or I want to be like, never. I just, wherever I was, I did the best job I could.
Well, let me tell you,
I get put, and then I just do the, you know, I just make the best of the situation.
let me tell you something. As long as I've known you, you never looked down on a person. And I know you from the get-go. And when you went right to the top, you were the same person all along. And I did appreciate that because.
And I appreciate you saying that, Ron.
Well, no, I mean, there's people who get up there, once you're on top, they'll look down like everybody else is a scumbag. You never did that. So let me acknowledge that fact for our audience and you.
I appreciate that, Ron. I'll tell you another thing that I did, which I think that's just a gift from God because I did not consciously do it. I never proselytized to one person in my family about Scientology. I never talked to my brothers and sisters, oh, maybe you should do this, or I'm so wonderful, or I'm doing so great, or my father, or my friends. Never. And no one ever noticed that. No one never noticed that I was actually doing this alone. I mean, looking back on it now, they probably could have said that was the damn spy all along. That was the interloper because he wasn't associated or connected with anyone. He had no family in there, no one. He just came from nowhere, rose to the top, and now he's telling all our damn secrets. And partially that would be true because I never proselytized to my family. So when I did get out, they didn't know anything about Scientology. They didn't care. And, you know, and when I came back, they were like, oh, okay, you're back now. You're done with that stupid shit. Well, come on, you know. And I was welcomed back into my family. I didn't have anyone that was disconnecting from me or anyone that I had disconnected from or any of that plague that happens with people that get into Scientology.
Yep. Well, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So I got all my kids, and they love me, and my sisters and brothers, they love me. And now, you know, and that cannot be taken from me because I never gave it.
Okay, so now getting back to the story, you're up at the top there. You're probably third in command, and then you went into a demise. What happened that you lost out there?
I kind of go into it in the book. You know, my whole thing with Scientology, I didn't care about playing follow the leader or let's organize or clear the planet. You know, that clearing the planet stuff was, you know, that was just like something I just overlooked from the very beginning. And I just want to quickly note why. The idea that a human man can change conditions on this planet is not a concept I was raised with. I was raised Catholic, for whatever it's worth. I was raised as a Catholic. I spoke Latin as a child. I was an altar boy, did the, you know, Bible study, blah, 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 blah. Went through all of that. So, and I say that to say this. I was always taught that Jesus was coming to save humans. Not Elron, not some human air breather like us, because to me, I don't know, for some reason, I could see the folly of humans, putting your trust in a man. You're going to get effed every time, So, I take my trust to a man to a certain level. But for me, that I never got the concept that, oh, we're going to rise up and save ourselves. No. So, there was that.
So basically, it was your just not following that party line that I guess eventually took you off the top. Is that it?
Well, first off, there was no magic, and this is the key point, especially after L. Ron died, because I had done all of those levels.
Yeah.
And, I ended up having less spiritual capability, less spirituality than I had when I walked in the damn door. Wow. You know what I mean? But I always had that carrot. Oh, you just do one more level. Just the one more, and do the one more nothing. I kind of get into it in the book of what happened when I went through the levels. But and then OT8. Okay, now L. Ron's dead. Oh, where there's all of these other OT levels that he's developed, right? Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, we're in the money now. He's dead, and we have all the OT levels. We're getting ready to make bank. It's getting ready to be so good. So, what happens? Ray Medoff goes to get the OT levels. Pat Broker ain't got them. What? Now the shit starts, where Dave and Pat Broker are like, there's a power struggle at the top while they're trying to come out with these OT levels. But Ray said, I got some scraps, some things that were laying around when L. Ron died, because Ray really was the only one actually there. And he says, I can put something together with this. We'll put together an OT level. We'll put together OT8. And then, we'll get these others from Pat eventually. So, Ray puts together this bulletin and they're doing this OT8. And Dave, this is kind of the point where he really started acting out really bad, even for me. Now, they're coming out with these levels. He doesn't want me to see the shit. Are you crazy? So he decides on his own to go and release this OT level, OT8. And him and Ray go out to the ship, and I'm just sitting in the office, I'm just like, this is going to be a disaster. I already knew. And they came back. And I mean, they were like whip dogs. Like, I don't want to talk about it. Several days later, Ray Medoff said it was a fucking disaster. People were running out screaming Jesus' name, and it was a big mess. I'm like, what did you guys do? Let me see. And he finally let me see. Oh my God. I saw that bulletin. It was called Student Briefing Number 1, where L. Ron tells everyone, well, it's just been a big trick. I've been lying to everyone, basically, because I'm the devil. I'm Lucifer. I'm the bringer of light. And, this Jesus guy, gay as hell, lover of young boys and men, bad temper. He's the one that people should be hating. Everybody has it confused. Lucifer is the light bearer with knowledge, helping humans, blah, blah, blah. He starts running in this whole Satanism. And if you understand what he was talking about, which I understood much later, because I started studying where this theology, this Madame Blavatsky, fucking Albert Pike bullshit comes from, which is where he comes from. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is, now, I'm since spent my whole damn life, on this quest for magic, only to learn that I'm learning from the goddamn devil. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me now? Are you serious? That's when I said, oh no, it's done. There's nothing here for me. And I felt so horrible. I wasted my whole life in this organization. I mean, I had a crisis of consciousness. I was on the path, I had a faith in God, and it seemed like to me that God would manifest itself in my life, if I would do right things or do good things or whatever. But I totally forsook all of that shit that I've learned all my life for this. And I had learned earlier that the devil will trick you, many will be deceived, all of this shit, part of the theology. And then I realized it happened. Look at your stupid ass now. You're in your 30s, almost 40. You've been serving Satan, and this is what they have for you. Welcome to hell, jackass. That's what I'm like, ah! And then Dave wanted me to work with him, and because, the big falling out, Pat Broker was a jackass too. He was crazy. I couldn't stand him. So it was like I had to make a choice. Either I can continue with Dave, who was my friend. We were friends, actually. Or go with Pat Broker or do nothing. And I said, you know what? I'm out. I'm not going to do anything. Dave tried so hard to get me to be part of his team, and I just refused. I wouldn't even meet with him. Broker wanted, and Pat and Annie wanted me so hard to be with their team. I just refused. I just didn't meet with them. I'm like, I prayed to God at my desk. I sat there, I said, Lord, I have really effed up really, really bad. Yeah. I feel horrible about what's going on here because it's all, I could see it and feel it all getting ready to come crashing down. And I'm like, I'm on the wrong side. I don't know what to do. So I cried and prayed. That whole time that Pat and Dave were fighting each other and splitting up the church, I was crying and praying.
Wow.
Because I knew nothing was there.
Yeah.
We're all just in a mess.
Yep. And I'll tell you got to get Jesse's book, by the way. It's called The Expert Witness because he goes into detail on all this stuff. So remember, you can get that on Amazon or maybe some other way, but I think it's the easiest way to remember. Just go The Expert Witness. Anyway, go on, Jesse. I just wanted to mention that because this book
is so, I can sit here and speak about my thoughts, but one thing that someone correctly pointed out in this book, and I believe it was Mike Rapid, I've spoken to people about these things that I've spoken to, that I'm speaking to you about, and they've gone, wow, wow, wow. But until you read it in the sequence that it happened, you don't really get the full concept. We're only able to do and say so much in these words. But it took me 7 years to write this book. So,
well, I'll tell you, I recommend it. And I'm telling you something. I'm not just saying it because I got you on the program. No, I read the goddamn book. And I'll tell you, people got to read this and get a full understanding of how this went down.
Yeah.
Look, we're coming to, where we're going to have to pull the plug on the program. So I think we've made our point on that. What do you think, Jesse?
Well, I'm just so happy to be able to talk to you, Ron. One thing that we haven't been able to cover, and I'll just cover real quick, is our personal relationship throughout this whole journey of how you and I came together and your family. Just, I know both of your sons, friends with them. I knew your ex-wife, Loretta. She had that voice too. I'm thinking maybe the kids may have gotten that because she had that deep voice. She was a wonderful person. And we sat down, ate together, broke bread together. We lived together as family. So I guess what I want to say is I'm just so happy that Scientology wasn't able to take that away from us and we're able to enjoy it at a later point in our lives. I'm really happy to be back connected with you and the devil is a lie. He don't need to win.
Yeah. Well, look at also when we were both at Gold and you came down the sliding board into a post in Golden Era Productions, you were in charge of sound and you did many gigs with us where we played for locals. You remember that?
Right. Yeah, we used to do a great time. And I held all of this inside. I never spread dissension amongst the people that were still there because I knew there was no way for me to explain it. I had to, oh my God, I believe that's eventually why I got cancer. I was just holding so much in and I had just begun to write about it.
Wow.
And that's when I got sick. And
why don't you follow up on that a little bit right now? Because I also want to get into your advice for anybody who wants to leave the church and how they can, come come up and like you've done. I mean, you wrote a wonderful book. You're a mortgage broker out in Las Vegas. Maybe I shouldn't have said
Yeah.
it. Go, it's out of my mouth,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And you've done very well for yourself.
Well, it's been it's not an easy thing for sure, but one thing that I place above anything else is I never place myself, just like you say, above another person. I'm never insensitive to how another person feels. For some reason, innately in my life, I've had either the willingness or the ability to walk in the other person's shoes, and in the world they call that empathy. I've had a over generous amount of empathy my entire life, and that's given me a perspective. And like I say, it took my ego, because I have no desire to be above anyone under any fucking circumstances. I have no ego to be number one. I have no ego to be the richest. I have no ego to run companies where I take from other people and pool it for myself and put on makeup and shit. It's just never been my way.
No, you are blessed with that trait. I got to tell you that, and it's a trait that I've observed in you, and that's not a bullshit statement you're making at all, Jesse.
No, and to me, I've always considered it a fault, because it's like, well, you don't have no ego. Look at the big house this one got, and look at the car. I don't give a fuck. I don't. Especially after this experience with the cancer. When I crossed that line and I saw how much you take with you when you leave, you don't even take the air you breathe with you when you cross that line. All this shit is gone. So, anyway.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a bit of an ego, and I'll tell you what it is. And it's a joke. Let me preface this entire thing. I'm going to say it's a joke, because some of the people here that I play with in different bands, I play with some different Dixieland bands and just some other bands that we play standards. And they think I'm famous because I've been on national television on many shows. So I says, okay, well, because I'm famous, I'm going to charge you a celebrity surcharge for playing this gig. So I charge $1.13 celebrity surcharge, cash only, no fucking checks, man. It's a standing joke, because as far as I'm concerned, you're a celebrity in your own mind. It's bullshit, okay? You're walking this planet Earth on 2 feet just like everybody else is. And the more you can help your fellow man, or maybe inform them like you're doing, like with your book, infoing them of...
and like you're doing and have done with your book, Ruthless?
Well, I'll tell you, this is an effort by a lot of people. I commend you for standing up and speaking out, and anybody who does this. And I guess we could kind of end this off, because I think it's been a great interview, Jesse.
Well, thank you so much, Ron, and I really appreciate being able to get it out. And we'll just have to circle the wagons and at another time to talk about other things maybe that we didn't get to. But I certainly am appreciative of you in this interview today.
Yep, and I thank you, Jesse, for appearing. And just in closing, remember, those of you who are considering joining Patreon, I invite you to do so, because it does help. And I appreciate all the help I can get here. And you can be part of this movement just by simply contributing whatever you can, whatever you feel you could afford to do. I welcome that. And I welcome your listening to this. And also subscribe, because, oh, by the way, I'm having the second interview with Nathan Rich, maybe next week or the following week. So you should subscribe to know when this is going to go down, because now we're going to see how he turned himself around from just a horrible upbringing and a horrible experience with Scientology into a very successful young man. So I think I've said enough. And Jesse, thanks again. Remember, everybody, go out and get Jesse's book today, The Expert Witness. He's coming out with another one. It's called The Not So Expert Witness. The last one is The Bad Witness. You don't want to get that one. It's a piece of shit. No, seriously. Go on Amazon, click on it, or you can get it on Kindle. You can start reading it right away. Either way, you will absolutely enjoy this. So, from all of us here, which is me and my producer, and Jesse Prince, my wonderful friend, I would say, I am Ron Miscavige. This has been Life After Scientology. See you on the next episode.